Okay, so we're going to go through problem 4-16. What I'll do for you guys, it should be recording, I hope so. I'll post this video on Moodle. And what I'll do for you guys is I will save this template for when you guys do your textbook problems, and you can use it. Sound good? All right.
Sure.
All right. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we got to recognize, what do we calculate? Well, we're calculating the equivalent units of production, right? So the first thing we need to start off with is units transferred out. And I apologize because I realize I'm totally anal when it comes to spreadsheets. Material conversion costs. Okay, so in the problem, they told us that we started off in the beginning of May with 10,000. We added 100,000 units, or 100,000 pounds, and then we ended the unit with 15,000 units left in ending inventory, right? So what we can do then is just say the 10,000 plus the 100,000 minus the 15,000. Come on. And that gives us 95,000 units. So that's how many units that we completed and transferred out. Remember, these are 100% completed with respect to material and with respect to conversion costs. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we got to look at our ending WIP. And we really need to calculate what are the equivalent units of production. Well, we know that in ending WIP, we have 15,000 units for both material and conversion costs. But the book tells, or the problem states that, oh, by the way, with respect to material, you have 60% completed. With respect to conversion costs, you're only 20% completed. So we can run those numbers, right? If we take our 15,000 times our 0.6, we get 9,000 units with respect to material in ending WIP, bless you. And then we do the same thing with conversion costs. 15,000 times 0.2, because they're 20% completed with respect to conversion costs, we get 3,000. So now to figure out what the equivalent unit of production is, we're going to add up for material the 95,000 that were completed and transferred out plus the 9,000 that are still remaining in ending WIP. It really helps if I know how to type, you know that. Not funny? A little bit? No? Moving on. All right. Okay, so for equivalent units of production, you should have 104,000 with respect to material and 98,000 with respect to conversion costs. Anybody not get that?
Can you pick up that formula again?
Sure, which,
It's not the 80. It's just the same thing, right?
yeah, I added the 95,000 of, with respect to conversion costs that were completed and transferred out, plus the 3,000, which ends up being the 20% of the 15,000 of ending WIP. No problem. Okay, so step 2. We need to calculate the cost per equivalent unit. and I'm just going to abbreviate EUP just to make it a little more simpler. Okay, so we have the same thing with respect to, there we go, with respect to material and conversion costs. So I need to figure out what are my costs in the beginning WIP with respect to material and with respect to, actually let me do it this way. Is that better? That way we got them right there. Okay, so what are my costs in beginning WIP with respect to material? $1,500. Okay. With respect to conversion costs, how much costs are in beginning WIP? Good, 7,200. And those are plug numbers. They were given to us, so we're okay. Okay. So the next thing we need to figure out are what are the costs that we added during production. So I'm going to say cost added. Okay. So with respect to material, how much cost did we add in the month of May? $154,500. Okay, good. With respect to conversion costs, $90,800. So from here, we can add these up and we can say, okay, here's our total costs. And remember, in that example we did on the board, I said, you know what? I'm going to call this row A. And if you notice, if you're doing Excel, if you're doing a function, give me a bottom line to show that you're doing some mathematical function here. So, total cost with respect to material is $156,000. Total cost with respect to conversion is $98,000. So now, we're going to plug in what our equivalent unit of production is. Guess what? We already calculated this. We already did this in part 1. So thinking back to part 1, I know that I have 104,000 equivalent units with respect to material. With respect to conversion costs, I have 98,000. So to figure out what the cost per EUP is, let me go back here. I just divide column A and column B. So we got $156,000 of material costs divided by the equivalent units with respect to material cost. I got 150. Do the same thing with conversion costs. Total cost with respect to conversion is 98,000 divided by the equivalent units of production with respect to conversion costs, 98,000. It gives me $1. Maybe. Yeah. So I have my equivalent units of production for material and for conversion costs. What's number 3 say? What's number 3 asking? Cost of ending WIP. And what's 4 asking for? The units that we transferred out, right? Okay. So we're going to bang out 3 and 4 together. The reason why we're going to do this is because the way the table's set up, through the PowerPoints we went through and each step and the slides. This, for lack of a better term, report has both of those functions. So we'll just include it all in one. Okay? Oh, by the way, if you're using Excel, whenever you get an answer, do me a favor, give me a double underline border. Sure. So in the, I don't know what this little part of the ribbon's named. It's right underneath where the font is. We have bold, italics, underline. If you go right next to it, this is how you can pick all your borders. If you want bottom, top, left, right, no border, all borders, whatever. But if you go to the last one, or the last option, which is within the borders, it says top and double bottom border. You just click that, and that's perfect. That'll do you. Okay. So we're going to figure out cost of ending WIP and cost of T-FORD units, transfer units, right? Okay. So we're going to do the same thing, right? We got to do them with respect to material and with respect to conversion. Okay. So the first thing we're going to look at is our ending WIP. Remember, when we looked at this slide in the lecture portion, we said, okay, up to this point, we said, what do we start with? What do we add? Where are we at the end? With this step, we say, okay, let's start with what's left, figure out that cost, and then we'll figure out the cost of transferring something out, okay? So we're going to start with ending WIP. Now, the nice thing about this is, guess what? We already did all the work. We just have to put it together. We just got to link cells is really all we have to do, right? So with respect to material, what is my ending WIP? How many units do I have? That's the total. I'm looking just for ending WIP. Okay, you said 15,000. You're real close. It's the 9,000. With respect to conversion, how much do I have in ending WIP? 3,000, right? Just come up here and just plug it in. Okay, so we said ending WIP, we have 15,000 units that are partially completed. Check this out. 9,000 and 3,000 gives me 12,000. That's not my 15,000, right? That's okay. In total, if we added all the material together and all the costs together, we would have 12,000 units in total, based on what we added to it. So now we got to figure out what's the cost per EUP. Do I need to calculate anything really to figure that out? No. What step did I do that in? The previous step, right, exactly. So I'm just gonna, just to make it look nice, $1.50 with respect to material. With respect to conversion cost, it's $1. So now what I'm gonna do, there we go. I'm gonna say, okay, the cost that's in ending WIP. Well, I just multiply. With respect to material, I got 9,000 equivalent units times $1.50. I got $13,500. With respect to conversion cost, I do the same thing, right? How many units do I have in ending WIP? 3,000 times my cost per equivalent unit with respect to conversion cost is $1. I got $3,000. So my total now, 13,500 plus 3,000. 16,500. That's the total cost I have in ending WIP. It's broken down as 13,500 with respect to material, $3,000 with respect to conversion cost. So now I can go ahead and do part 4, which is how do I figure out the cost that I transferred out? Well, I take the units that were transferred. I already figured that out in part 1, 95,000. I know what my cost per EUP is. It's $1.50 with respect to material. It's $1 with respect to conversion costs. I'm going to put in my double border here. In the cost, how do I word that? Cost of units transferred out. Take the 95,000 times the cost of $1.50 with respect to material. And I do the same thing with conversion costs. I take the 95,000 times $1. I get 95,000. So the total cost of everything that I transferred out is $237,500. Okay. Did anybody get to number 5? Okay. So somebody said, uh-huh? Okay. Yes, okay. So here's how number 5 should go. Number 5 is my reconciliation report. Remember, I got to reconcile all my costs, right? So my costs to be accounted for. So the first thing I got to look at is what is the cost in the beginning, cost of WIP inventory in the beginning. So to figure this out, all we got to do is go to the book, right? And they give us the cost in beginning WIP with respect to material and the cost cost of beginning WIP with respect to conversion cost. So what is the cost of beginning WIP with material? Okay, so how'd you get it? The total cost is what? Yep. Actually, let me get rid of this. Sorry. So we have 1,500 with respect to material, plus, what's that conversion in there? 7,200. So we just took that from the book, right? The next thing that we need to really account for is the cost that we added. So the book tells us, hey, we added X amount of material, added X amount of conversion costs. So what are those? How much did we add of material?
154,590,800.
Yep. I already added those in part 2. And I apologize for asking you what they were in the beginning because they're all part of our second problem. Okay, so we got 245,300. That's the total cost. Okay, of beginning WIP and the cost that we added. So if we add these up together, we get 254,000. Okay? Now we have to look at the ending WIP and the units completed and transferred out. So we're going to look at ending WIP costs. So what are my costs of ending WIP? Do I have those? Do I need to calculate anything? No, because they're already calculated, right? I calculated them in 3 and 4, right? So that would be the 16.5, right? How did I get 16.5? Well, I took the 13.5 of materials and the 3,000 of conversion costs. So then I take costs transferred out. Well, I don't need to add anything. We already did that problem, right? We have 237,500. And the 237,500 came from part 4, cost transferred out, right? So I'm going to add these up. And these are the total costs accounted for. So notice that they match, right? The beginning WIP and the cost that we added equal 254,000. The cost of ending WIP plus the cost of everything we transferred out equal, because they're 254,000. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now. Maybe.